versions of things, it's not as blue all the time as I might think. I thought. So that's 57% blue, which makes it the second bluest film we have, with The Shallows being 69% blue, because The Shallows is just clear blue sky, clear blue water, everywhere you look, the whole film.
Which you did remind me of one other just brief scene that I wanted to point out that we didn't talk about. I think that the scene where where Aquaman and Mera dive into the trench and it does that slow motion, and that is just objectively a gorgeous shot.
Yeah, with the red flare.
The flare,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's awesome. That reminded me of my wife asked me to point out that there's a lot of parallels between this and Finding Nemo, which there's like two or three. That's a film we'll never cover here because I'm very familiar with it and can probably, between me and my wife, quote the entire film. But
Oh,
there's a trench.
you actually did remind me of another a tangent that's, just to derail this thing again, and as usual. But as I was live tweeting this, there's one line that Mara says like during the tidal wave thing where it's like, or whenever they're first talking, but she's like, the surface world has all these cities that have the sewers that flow their waste into our ocean. And that made me think, how do toilets work in
Okay,
Atlantis?
I made this exact same note because when I was on your podcast on my Groundhog Day, I brought up how does Phil's toilet work? Like, does he have the same poop every day in Groundhog Day? And I was going to bring it up. We didn't head in that direction, so I'm so glad that you brought this up. Thank you. So yes, and also when they're having the fight in Sicily and the guy, Mira breaks the guy's suit and he dunks his head in the water so he can breathe. I was wondering, does he know that's a toilet? What does he think? Does he know what he's doing there? And then I mean, how do toilets work? Is my theory would be, this is how I would do it, is they basically have an upside down toilet full of air, and so they do what their business, and they use helium in some way, and it floats to the surface and heads up that way. So they basically do the exact same we do, but opposite, and then they have another a pipe that pumps down air and helium into that toilet to then. But you just have
my idea, which as I had somebody reply to me, and he mentioned, it's either something involving currents or animals, and so I replied back with a GIF of Jacques from Finding Nemo with the scum beard, and I think that they do use.
I am ashamed.
Yeah, I think that it does involve some sort of aquatic life that feeds off of their waste, where it's collected in some area somehow. Like I don't have the full engineering works, what sort of contraption or how it all gets to one place, but I think that it somehow does involve aquatic life that feeds off of it.
Yeah, they've got a room that's just full of those fish that you use to clean a fish tank. I've never had a fish tank, but it's like I think it's just called a cleaner fish. It's probably the name for it, but they just have a room full of them, and it's not a nice life for them. It's a horrible life for them, but they enjoy their
for
job.
them, it's like that's what they feed off of. So it's it's like it's paradise for them because it's like it's a buffet.
They live in a bouncy castle full of frosting, as far as they're concerned. So good. Wonderful. I'm glad we covered that. Excellent. Okay, so Bubba, where can the listeners find you? What have you got going on?
Well, you can find me at my hub is still flightstitesandmovienights.com, where I typically post all of my side projects as well. You can find me on Twitter at BubbaWeeds. I have two podcasts. The first one, It's Time to Rewind, is a time loop podcast where I cover time loops one loop at a time. As of this recording, I'm in between seasons. The first season was Groundhog Day, and the second season will be Twilight Zone. It's not just a movie podcast. I jump back and forth between movies and TV series because there's a lot of TV episodes that feature time loops. And my other podcast is Filmwise, which I'm bringing back. It will be a monthly podcast now, where each episode I bring on a guest and they introduce me to a classic film or a modern classic or some other great film that they love that I've never seen before. And then in return, I introduce them to my world of the superhero and comic book movies and have them watch one of those movies that they've never seen before. Not always a fair trade, but usually a fun discussion.
I think I've tried to have as fair when I've been on a few times. We did 12 Angry Men and Superman and Titanic with Dick Tracy, I think. Are the two that I've been on. So I think that was kind of fair. Our first two were classic films. Our second two were films that some people love and some people hate. Yeah, always a fun time. And yes, Groundhog Day. Fantastic film. I look forward to your future seasons. I think you haven't yet announced what your second, after Twilight Zone, your second full dive film will be, have you?
Oh, I haven't decided it at all. I think, whenever I'm about halfway through the Twilight Zone, I'll probably do some sort of poll where I bring up a few different options because I don't want to go through all the most popular ones right away, but I don't quite want to delve into some of the dreck yet.
Yeah, that's why. With these Deep Blue Sea adjacent films, I'm hoping Mark comes back before I'm really plumbing the depths of the Sharknado franchise and the like. We've had a regular guest, Kevin Culp, has got a list of I think 120 odd shark movies. His lockdown challenge was to just watch as many shark films as he can. He's ranking them all, and after about number 15, they all just sound terrible. So I'm hoping to. I've got a decent enough list to last me a few months. I just need Mark to come back before I run out.
I think there's another podcaster, Robert Black, who did the Groundhog Day Project, where he watched Groundhog Day every single day for an entire year. And he's also doing a Groundhog Day Minute podcast that he's working on. And he has cultivated an IMDb list of time loop movies and episodes, and that list is a little over 100 long.
Yeah, I don't want to tell people how to live their lives, but Groundhog Day every day for a year, I feel like I'd love to have that kind of time. I almost envy him. It's a perfect one. So good. Well, thank you for joining me, Bob Wheat, on the show today to talk about Aquaman.
That was a lot of fun.
Loved having you on here. Listeners, you can find more of my writing over at lifeversusfilm.com, Life vs Film, and I am on the Lambcast once a month, hosting a movie trivia podcast episode called Lampardy, based on Jeopardy, which is always a fun time. I've been on a few times. And I'm actually going to be on the Lambcast this week to talk about No Time to Die, which I'm recording in less than an hour after this podcast, because it's a Bond film, and I love Bond films, and I've seen them all before, so we're not going to be talking about Thunderball on this show anytime soon, because that's one I don't enjoy all that much, and it does have sharks in it, but that's about it. And you can find this podcast on social media at Deep Blue Sea Pod on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, or email us deepblueseapod@gmail.com if you have any ideas for future Deep Blue Sea adjacent films we can cover. But as for today, thank you, Bob Wheat, for joining us. Next week, I will be looking at Leviathan, a 1989 underwater film with Peter Weller, and that's as much as I know. So I'm going in almost entirely blind for that one, so that should be fun. But as for this week, I've been Jake Lewitt, and we'll Deep Blue see you next week.